director of Green Mountain Express, and he's here to kind of share about that experience in his new role. So I'll leave it with this. When I asked one of his previous employees what I should say in introducing Brian in one sentence or less, she said, well, he likes to talk. So I said that was a great way to cue up an introduction for a speaking engagement. I'll turn it over to Brian.
But anyway, I want to thank everybody for having me here today. I'm excited to be back with the club. There are a few new faces here since my departure about 3 years ago when I took a management position in my last organization and was all over the state of Vermont and in a hotel way too many nights a month, putting, I don't know, 25, 30,000 miles on a car every year. So it's really good to be back. It's good to be in a position where I'm grounded here in town and I get to be home with my family at like 5 after 5 every night. What a great thing that is. And looking forward to an opportunity to be back here in this club. Something that I've missed for the past 3 years since I had that change. And it's another thing that being grounded here in town is going to allow me to do again. Hopefully be an active member here in the club again. So anyway, that's not why I'm here today. I'm here today because Maria has asked me to come talk in regards to my new position. And I got some cheat sheets here so I don't miss something. But I handed out a few things, and one of the biggest things I think that I handed out would be, I put one sheet at each table. It's this kind of just released. The app world is a big thing nowadays with cell phones, and they finally come out with something that's kind of along the lines, if you're using Uber, Google Maps, that type of stuff, for the transit service. And it's a way that people are going to be able to log into this thing, find out where's my bus. It's going to create a lot of, decrease the calls that we get at the transit center saying, hey, did I miss the bus? Is the bus late? Because a lot of people rely on those apps nowadays, and they can program in a trip that's going to tell you how long a walk it is to get to where. If you have this app, it works in almost, I was in Maine, and when I was there on vacation, plugged it in, gave me the local bus service. So it's really nice. It'll tell you you've got a 7-minute walk, so you might want to think about leaving 2 minutes ago. So, it's just another good feature that's going to help people navigate transportation, especially when you're, for some folks, yes, here, just where's my bus? Is it on time? Is it running behind? But when you're out of town and you're in another area, what does it look like? I'm in New York City. What's going on? What's that connection look like? So we're really excited that we've got it here in Vermont. I mean, being a rural state, there've been a lot of bugs they've had to work out of it because there's points where we lose GPS signals, those types of things. But that's the big thing. They just gave us the okay yesterday to go ahead and promote the heck out of that. So that's why I'm starting with that, because we've been working on it, piloted it, a few issues here, a few there, but they're feeling confident that it's in a good spot now. So check it out. There's a nice little video on how to use it. So I'll start with that plug. So Green Mountain Express, the Green Mountain Community Network. What are we about? Well, you see our buses driving around town. We're actually about more than just the buses that drive around town. Our house is really divided into two parts. We do the demand service, which is providing rides for elderly and disabled, Medicaid. So we're getting folks to medical appointments. We're getting through the elderly and disabled monies that helps get folks to critical things they need, whether it be appointments, whether it be shopping, that type of stuff. And then the other piece is the fixed routes, our bus service. We are also currently operating not only in Bennington County, but in Windham County. Not the bus line in Windham County, that's strictly the E&D and the Medicaid. Because basically how that works, the state has a contract through VPTA, Vermont Public Transportation Association, and that's comprised of all the transit providers throughout the state. They oversee that, and in each county, we take care of that specific transportation. In Windham, the transportation agency over there doesn't do it, so somebody's got to pick it up. So when that happened, we stepped in and we picked that up. So we have a satellite office over in Brattleboro. Currently have about 42 full-time equivalent employees, the bulk of which are over here in Bennington. And we have a large list of volunteer drivers, because one of the things that Medicaid is really big on is the use of volunteer drivers. Basically, that's somebody that comes in with their own vehicle. They go through the background checks and everything that are required by law, but they drive their own vehicle. They're reimbursed just mileage for what they travel. So we reimburse the mileage. It's not income. Some folks like to do that. It's something to get out of the house and do. We have probably, I don't know, 2 to 3 dozen folks that do that between the 2 offices for us. And it's a really positive thing. So, as you can see, there's a lot of folks, a lot of moving parts to that. It's a lot bigger than a lot of people realize. You may say to yourself, you may be coming up by the hospital and you see buses almost behind each other. You're like, what the heck's going on? Why are they running buses on the same route? I've had people ask me that. Well, there's a good reason, because that one bus actually is running the route. The other bus may be been needed to transport somebody that has a wheelchair, or has other needs and needs something bigger than just a small van. So with that, you may see 2 buses going. The one just may be doing a Medicaid ride for somebody. So focusing on the fixed service routes, our bus lines. I mean, I put, on the table, I don't think there's enough for everybody, but I put our schedules, which we are currently in the process of doing the new one. So there will be some minor changes to that. We had to change the Brown line because that's one that was serving both the colleges, Southern Vermont and Bennington. We will still serve Bennington. Obviously, we don't have a need to serve Southern Vermont anymore, unfortunately. So in that time, we've gotten creative. We kind of compared what we could do in an area we weren't serving. We're kind of going up the east end of town. So we're going to have a little bit of service up that way. And it's a wash in what we were doing for miles going up to Southern Vermont. So we replaced that, hopefully in a way that it's going to be supportive to the community and prove to us that we can now go and ask for further routes, So always looking at ways of doing that. And so if you look through there, a lot of people look at it and say, well, it's kind of confusing. How do I read this thing? And really just the way you would think you would read it. When you find the line you're on, and I don't have my glasses, so I don't know why I'm looking at that. But if you say you were on the orange line, I'll pick a line so you know that's something to see. And that's our line that runs Bennington up to Manchester. So you'll see the first one starts at 6:15 a.m. It's at the bus terminal, 215 Pleasant Street. And then it's going to show you along the way. You'll see an R. That's a requested stop. So if somebody wants us to stop at Grace Christian, they would call ahead and request us stop there. Same with Aldi's. Then it'll give stops along the way. If you go down to, let's see, and then you're going to see somewhere that says time may vary, and that depends on a few different things along the way. One of the things that can throw the bus off, people say, well, how do they get off? Obviously, these are the obvious things. There's an accident, there's construction. But we're also able to do deviations. And what I mean by that is within a quarter of a mile of our route, you're able to call ahead and ask for us to stop at X point and pick you up. There is a charge that comes with that, and it can't exceed, the charge doesn't exceed the amount of the fare that you pay. But the important thing is we're able to do that. But when we do that, it may throw you off a few minutes, so one of the ways the bus can get behind. We tend to not do more than 2 deviations per route, just because you hit a point where you can't, if you deviated the whole way along, you would never keep the schedule. And another thing that I found interesting that folks don't know is you can flag a bus down. Did anybody know that? Almost every time I've done the talk, I've been surprised that people didn't know you could wave the bus down. So as long as you're on the route and you're in a safe place, not standing at a corner, because the bus is not going to stop at a corner or on that sharp curve or whatever, but if you're at a safe spot for them to park, if you wave to the bus, they will stop and pick you up. So I tend to emphasize that everywhere because I'm shocked that every time I go, people don't know that. So note to self, make sure people know that. So where does our service go? We have lines that connect every which way in this state. You know, we've got the Shires Connect that comes into the station down there, bringing folks up north. We've got Vermont Transline. You can actually do a trip and get to Burlington in the same day now. It's a long day, but you can get to Burlington in the same day, which not too many years ago wasn't possible. Going north on that orange line that I just talked about, we connect with the bus from Rutland. They meet us up in Manchester by the town office, and there's a switch over there so people can get north and south. We have the purple line that goes down through Pownell, and we're able to connect with Berkshire Transit down by the Williams Inn, and also Peter Pan. People can connect there to go further distances. Going to the west, we have Yankee Trails comes in out of Albany, so there's service over to New York State, and we work with the mover over in Wilmington, and between the two of us have routes heading that way and connect all the way over to Brattleboro where folks are able to hit Greyhound over there. So service can happen in every which way now, and it's really exciting because, like I say, it wasn't too many years ago. It took you 2 days to get up to Burlington, and some of these other things were near impossible. So when I talk about those other bus lines coming in, whether it be Yankee Trails or Vermont and the North Shire Connect, they're coming right into our station. They pull right through the yard. So it's really nice. Once they redid the transit center there back about 8-9 years ago, it opened up the availability to have these folks come right in there. And so there's kind of that fixed place. People know they come to the station, they sit there, and they know what to expect. So what else do I want to say? So, okay, besides our fleet of buses, which we have about, let's say about 16 to 18 right now. We've got a couple more new ones coming right now. We also have a fleet of vehicles that allow us to deal with folks with different disabilities and wheelchairs. We have some new wheelchair vans that come in that can actually fit 2 wheelchairs in the van. So that's pretty exciting because it's a lot cheaper when we can run a van than when we run a full-size bus to pick somebody up. So always trying to think about how to do those things more efficiently. And we also have a fleet of minivans, which we use to transport, other non-emergent folks, like for the Medicaid, for doctor's appointments. And one of the other groups I didn't mention that we serve are the children that are connected with DCF. We get those kids to daycare, preschools, and we currently in Bennington carry, I think it's about 16 children we transport to make sure they're getting to and from their preschool and making sure their needs are met there. We just picked up for the first time, we've got 6 kids over in Brattleboro or in the Windham County area that we'll be transporting this year. So that's exciting, making sure more of those needs are met. So we're constantly busy, constantly working on one thing or another. So I guess questions. People usually have a lot of questions and I run out of time, so I don't want to talk forever. Ted?
How much would it cost somebody to go from Bennington to Burlington on your facilities?
So we're not the ones that actually transport. That would be the Vermont Transline. And I don't quote me because it's not us. I'm not 100%, but I think it's like $20.
I bought a ticket for somebody 2 weeks ago, it's 32.
Okay, so I stand corrected, 32.
Things change.
Brian, it's right here on
Is it on the thing?
page 15, but it doesn't
Thank
sound
you.
like either one of those dollars.
Okay. Yeah, again, we're not in control of that one, so
Yeah.
I'm not positive absolutely what it is.
But you have to meet that in Rutland.
What's-
You have
no,
to go to Rutland.
they will actually come here.
Oh,
They
okay.
actually come here, and I don't know if it actually says it in here and gives. The new one I know we've got the new one we're working on actually has a schedule that gives the times. Yeah, I think this has the times here. If you're on page 15 again. So you can see Bennington, about 3:30 they arrive. You'd be up in Burlington at 7:30. Bennington to
It's not bad at all.
Bennington to Burlington Airport, the UVM is 27, so I don't know, somewhere in that range anyway.
Yeah,
Doug?
Yeah, I'm over 50, and this was complicated to me. How is your ridership? Do you get a lot of people?
We do, we actually do have good ridership. I wish I had the total numbers out. Last year, I wanna say our total ridership was we transported over 250,000 people
Wow.
and over 1 million miles of
Oh, wow.
rides, which is growing, and it's constantly growing. And, you know, we expect, I mean, one of the big things is like with the app, I mean, that's coming about because you're seeing like, the younger generation now is much more green thinking, they're much more, you know, it's just, they have a different thing. And a lot of these don't even plan on having cars, cause I can save money and it doesn't do this, and I can reduce the carbon footprint, so, you know, there's a big anticipation on what that's gonna look like. Now, it can be a little more challenging for somebody like us in a rural state, opposed to the city, but, you know, one of our focuses has been to educate the kids, and something that I will say with that is, students ride free. Those fares are out the window. They have a student ID, they ride our system for free. And it's important, and that's another way of, you know, getting them in the habit of doing these things and making good decisions. Kristen?
Can I just use an example of the purple
Yeah.
line, because I'm in Pownell. The times you arrive at the Williams Inn to pick up Peter Pan are the times Peter Pan is leaving there?
I don't
How do you know that?
I don't necessarily know that that's when they're there. I think it's probably like Vermont Transline, they come in at, they have set times they come in there, so there may be a wait time. I don't specifically know when they arrive.
But you wouldn't get there at 9:05 and have to wait till 12:30. You try to,
I would say there's one that probably connects pretty good with it.
yeah, interesting.
Or that one too, and I'm pretty sure that Peter Pan comes right to that stop.
Yeah.
If they don't, there's the way to connect with the Berkshire
Yeah, no,
Transit.
they
So
do.
there's always, if it's not the direct line that's getting you there, there's always, in conjunction with one of the other carriers, a way to get to the location where they do. Susan?
Pretty soon I'll be a senior citizen. Do you have senior rates?
No, the rates are the rates. There's no,
Have you had an opportunity to meet the woman who started this,
who started,
who created this bus thing?
Donna?
Donna?
Yeah, Donna mentored me for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks before she left. This is the end of week 9 for me without Donna there. I can get a hold of her anytime. If I picked up the phone and dialed now, she'd answer. And she'd go, yeah, what do you need? Which is really good. It's reassuring to know that that's there, because she was in the transportation for, 33 years. So
She's awesome.
she really knows what's going on. There's a wealth of knowledge among the team that's there. I was fortunate to come into a great organization that was built well, that has super team in place. And, you know, it was just understanding that the answer's usually there. One of those people on the team has the answer. It's just knowing who to go see. But yes, Donna has been instrumental in me taking over the organization. And to mention too, I spent just shy of 7 years on the board prior to going into this role. So that was really, the last position was what really got me into transportation anyway. As many of you know, I was in the employment world, and it was about getting folks jobs and folks that had barriers to employment. One of the biggest barriers was transportation. So it's, you know, that became a passion, that got me on the board, and I was doing a lot of work there. And then when Donna announced she was retiring, I was like, well, maybe this would get me back in town, maybe this is it. And I hemmed and hawed, and well, no, and I was in and I was out, and I finally said, why not? Because this is the opportunity to make an even bigger difference for more people in the community. And I put myself out there, and wham, here I am. So it's really good, and Donna's been great. Yeah.
Brian, could you talk about your funding, because, 50 cents a ride isn't enough to cover the costs, so.
Funding is, as I'm learning, there's a lot to it. So we are grant funded, and it comes through the Federal Transportation Agency. It's where the bulk of our funding comes from. All the other things I talked about, whether it be Medicaid or the children or E&D, those are all separate kind of grants that come through. What we're responsible for is, we get these monies, but we're responsible for a 20% match. So yeah, that helps, but it doesn't totally offset things, so we have to be really fiscally responsible. We have to come up with ways that we can, make funding so we can make things happen. There are a lot of people that really rely on the transportation system, and one of the first things I did when I came in was I hopped on the buses. I hopped in those vans with them to go pick up the kids or to pick somebody up from a Medicaid appointment. And, you know, riding on the bus system was, and I've been on, I was guilty as anyone, I've been on the board and I hadn't sat on one of those buses and ridden. And every now and then, I'm done with what I'm doing and I just go out and I hop on a bus line and I go, and the people on there don't know who I am, but it's about the experience, it's about understanding what passengers are going through and how many people ride that bus. And there are certain days that it's a lot heavier use than other days. You know, we have shopping lines that are crucial for people. On the weekends, we have a shopping line that gets people, you know, from one end of town to the grocery stores, because they're no longer grocery stores this end of town. So, you know, we have those things, and people, those are really busy lines, you know, like the Saturday line, because they can get to the grocery store.
It's interesting, I noticed that in Shasbury, the orange line that goes north-south will stop at, I think it's Paulins or something like that, but I noticed, you know, a whole bunch of cars and younger student age children getting off, and what I learned was that that's how some of the parents get their kids to Burn.
It is, so, you know, thinking about that, there are some schools, especially Burton, that kids are getting back and forth that way. We have some that connect with us, and just up there, we pick up after school and get them up the road to where the bus from Rutland picks them up and they go home to Rutland if they're up that way. And the same thing with Pine Cobble, Grace Christian. I mean, we have some, you know, that because they don't have the bus services and they're coming from out of town, so they use, you know, the purple line's another one that's well used, and our brown line that gets up into Shasbury or over into North Bennington and stuff, so it becomes a useful way for that.
Several years ago, the businesses, the ski industry up on the mountain was, in order to get people from down here to go to work up there, seasonal people, do you do those extra runs to get people to work and down, or?
We don't. We do part of the reason for the connection with over to Wilmington was for that. Wilmington does work with a ski mountain, and they have several that go that way. So we try to accommodate that. That's with my last job. That was one of the big frustrations, was how do we connect those things? And,
Not probably Stratton.
and no, and not at this time. And so those are all things we're looking at. And you know, I'm already working with the CWS team here in town, and just saw some things on another grant that came up, and actually going to be meeting this afternoon with the business account manager, and we're trying to dive into what the opportunities might look like, because this came up and said, let's see if we can put something together so it becomes for employment, and how can we prove that this will work. And you know, that's the kind of stuff that can happen with me in this role, and having those different connections. And so we're trying to do those things. I mean, it's really important, because that's what's gonna make the ultimate difference in our community, if we can get people working and remove what barriers there are. Because sometimes, you know, people look at someone and say they don't wanna work. Well, sometimes we take for granted that it's something like that. There's transportation that just, it doesn't give them the ability to work, because they may have to travel to a ski mountain.
Well, would it a possibility be to make a deal with the ski areas up there to help support the Green Mountain?
Well, we certainly working with the employers working with us would help, because we can't just create lines. The one thing that I found out for sure being in this role is I can't just say, hey, we're gonna run this express line that we're gonna have pick up here, here, and here, and we're gonna get to X, Y, and Z businesses. Because the first thing they say is, you wanna do that, you've already got a bus that runs that way, and you don't have, so you really have to develop it. One of the unique things is there's a program called Go Vermont, and really wonderful program that's through Vermont Transportation, V-Trans, and they have the ability for an employer to work with their employees, or the employees to start it, get a van, and it might cost the 6 people on the van, it might cost them $125 a month. And let's say they're working up in Manchester. That's literally what it costs them. That's to have the van, the gas, the maintenance on it, everything. If businesses get involved with that, like they have up north, up at Jay Peak, and up in that area, Burke, in the Northeast Kingdom, the businesses started paying for them themselves, because people showed up to work, and they were short employees, and they said, boy, by us doing this, it's not really that big of an expense. They can take it out of people's checks, they can do it pre-tax. There's so many advantages, so many different ways they can work it. And they have a driver, they have a backup driver. Check it out, Go Vermont. You can find it on V-Trans's website.
Related to that, I'm wondering if the 20% is somewhat, your 20% match is somewhat funded by the Grace Christian, Burton, the different schools. Do they,
Well, it's
Donate?
not because we don't technically work with the schools, it's a public fixed route, and the kid, in this case, the kids, because they're students, they get to ride for free.
right, but you don't solicit?
But we
no.
don't now, no, we don't, so.
Do you ever solicit them for donations?
We have, the colleges had worked with us and the colleges had done that. We have not with any of the schools to this point. I mean, I'm 9 weeks into this, so I got a lot of things I'm looking at how do I do this? Because when you buy a bus and you gotta pay 20% of it to get that grant money,
Yeah.
20% of the bus is a lot of money.
And related question, do the volunteer hours count toward that 20%?
So volunteer hours, they count, but not totally to that. They only count really in the Medicaid world and some other, like in certain areas they count. It doesn't totally count for everything though.
What volunteer hours are available? So what could we do?
As far as volunteer hours, what we do is we have volunteer drivers. And basically you have your own vehicle, you drive, and you come in and you get paid mileage. And you say, hey, I wanna drive maybe 1 day a week. You might say, I'd be willing to take once a week if you had a trip to Dartmouth, or if you had a trip to UVM, or if you had one to, and some people might say, I just wanna do local stuff. There's really a lot of flexibility with that, and we have a lot of folks, but I would say if someone's interested, grab my card and I can get you the information on that. I mean, the nice thing with it is, it doesn't count as income or anything, because it's strictly just a reimbursement for the mileage. And we currently go up 54.5 cents a mile. So, I mean, we got some folks that it does add up pretty quickly, but a lot of folks do it just because they wanna be out doing something.
Living on grant funding is no fun. Is there any strategic planning to get this in a permanent thing with state funding or some other way of funding it? Because that federal grant could dry up next fiscal year.
Yeah, really, I mean, that's the way they've operated forever, so at this point, I mean, obviously, I'm looking at the now picture right now because I'm still learning it, but I think we're gonna explore lots of different options in the coming months and years for sure.
You don't have state money at all, right?
Well, there's some state money, but like anything, I mean, regardless of whether it's coming state or federal, I mean, there's always a risk of that not happening, so, the grant world's tough, that's for sure.
Are any of your vehicles electric, or is there
No, we don't.
purchasing in the works to buy electric?
We don't have any electric right now. They're really just starting out, like the push here in the Northeast and in Vermont is really just kind of starting. They did just have something that went through the Volkswagen settlement that went out. There was some monies for that, and a lot of that was, there was ability for bus companies to put in for that grant and get funding to do electric vehicles. But it depended on what kind of vehicles you had too, and we don't have the big diesel buses, and those are the first ones they're trying to get away from. So we look at them, they're enticing, they're really expensive right now. So that means a lot more match money I've gotta come up with. But yeah, we're definitely interested in it. They're also, running into some challenges as far as in public transportation in a rural area on distances you travel with them and everything with the charges, and then how the winter's affecting some of them here. So there's still some things that so we're good, like maybe laying back a little bit, but we're definitely interested, and I know our operations manager is as well, so.
What is your annual budget?
Annual budget, our organization running about 4.6 million a year right now, so.
How much?
4.6.
And that's between covering it between the two areas too. That takes into account everything, fixed line, the demand response piece of it, Windham County, Bennington County.
Like that all your buses have bike racks on the front.
Yeah.
Comes in kind of handy. When the weather's nice, I ride my bike to work, and in the middle of the summer, thunderstorm, I'm not riding back in that. Throw the bike on the front of the bus and go back to Bennington.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because every bus does have a bike rack on it. not only that, bike racks, the other important thing to mention is, security purposes. Every bus has multiple cameras and that does video and sound. It's been very useful. We don't just go and look at them. Obviously, if there's an incident or something that comes up, we're able to look at it. It's passenger protection, it's driver protection. It's really been a wonderful thing because it's been helpful if somebody says, you know, there was another passenger harassing me or something, and it's allowed us to find that stuff and catch it. Or if, you know, somebody calls and says a driver's done something they shouldn't have done, well, we can go back and actually pull the footage and find that and look at it. So it's all about safety, and safety of driving habits, safety of passengers, safety of drivers, safety of other people in the community. So that's another nice feature that we've had now for a bunch of years, and every bus is equipped with that.
Do you have trouble getting drivers?
No, where's the wood? No, actually, right now in Bennington, we're good. And we've had, we've had some folks reach out to us looking for work, and we've got a solid group right now.
Excellent.
And things are good, so, hoping that it's gonna stay that way. Over in Brattleboro, it's been a harder area, I will say that, but even knowing from my last role, even in that place, trying to hire for over there it was one of those difficult areas. But I will say I did just successfully hire 2 drivers over there, so we're doing pretty good over there right now, but it's a different area.
What makes it difficult? I mean, I know
Di-
it's different.
Different areas are just, throughout the state are difficult, and, for whatever reason Brattleboro is, I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, I think you're right near Massachusetts, you're right near New Hampshire, so the labor area is a lot bigger. And then we get folks that wanna come and drive bus, and they live in Keene or something, and, well, that's great, but I gotta worry about you driving a half an hour each way, and then I've gotta worry about how well do you know the roads in Brattleboro, because that's a challenge. Like, if we're short there and I have to send a driver over from Bennington, like, it's gonna create some havoc because they don't know the roads in that area. So, there's always a lot to consider with a driver.
Drug tests.
Yes, definitely drug tests.
Do random drug testing with drivers?
We do, so basically everybody that works for us when they're hired, there's a pre-employment drug screen. Pre-employment drug screen and about a 9-way background check. Just about everything that can be checked on you is checked. And a lot of that has to do with the populations we're serving. We need to, protect them. So, you've got that, and then if you've performed any safety function within the organization, you are in the random draw pool. And the random draw pool is about 50% at any given time. So when I get that list of who's up for a random, there might be, I told you we've got, how many employees we got, well, I might see 9 people on that list. So they're checked quite regularly. Like anybody, one of the biggest challenges you have now is marijuana's legal.
Just ask that again.
And it's a big thing in the transportation world because it's legal in Vermont, it's illegal federally. And if you test positive, you test positive, and we've got federal money, so right there it's a game changer. Plus, they're doing a safety-sensitive job, so, one of the other challenges that comes with that, I'm not doing that, I'm taking CBD, okay, well, they can still sometimes give you a positive, and if they do a positive's a positive. They don't care if somebody's in a safety-sensitive position like this. You get that, that's it, so. But typically, we just run into it on the pre-employment, if somebody's gonna come in, yeah, I'll pass. So, one of the big things I've done is in the interview process, is my very second question I ask them is, I go through the whole thing that marijuana is legal in the state of Vermont, and go through that whole spiel. Is there any reason to think, I talk about the background check, is there any reason for you to think that any of these would be an issue? And I don't care which one, you don't have to tell me. And I've actually had people say, yep, and thank you. And it ends there, so we don't waste anybody's time. So, because it's legal. I can't change anything about that, but on my end, it's no good, so. So yes, that's created a lot of issues. They almost do a class on that at every conference or seminar I've been to. There's always one about marijuana in the workplace now. It's only gonna get worse. till they can figure out that test that's gonna timestamp something. And if you do that, I think you're gonna be pretty rich if you come up with that test, so. Work on it.
So we're about at the end of the time anyway, Brian, but I just wonder, since you did reference CWS and our business account manager for Weber and knowing your previous role, our business account manager from Weber will be coming to speak at the last meeting this month, so I'm wondering from the employer perspective, if you can share how you see your role now with CWS a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. One, it's been pretty cool because I had the working knowledge of it, so I knew it. But coming into it, being somebody in transportation made sense to me. And I've jumped in wholehearted. I mean, some of you folks probably remember me talking about the mock interview day that I came up with, I don't know how many years ago now, and doing that. Well, I'm happy to say that they're doing the first one since I left CWS, Weber officially, and I'm gonna be one of the employers there, actually doing some interviews. You know, I'm just doing my part that way. I mean, transportation is one part of it, the other part is I'm an employer now, and being able to, you know, provide the same things I went and looked for years is really, really fulfilling to be able to do that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.